Hi, I'm Rachel Abbott, and this is the Standard's Tech and Science Daily podcast. If you're new here, make sure to hit follow and give us a rating. Coming up, the Stardew Valley 1.6 update is finally here. But first, TikTok has banned accounts associated with Russian state media in efforts to prevent disinformation in the run-up to the US presidential election. The tech giant says the move is a result of accounts engaging in covert influence operations. The social media app had previously restricted the content in the UK and EU, marking the content as state-controlled media. However, they are now understood to be entirely banned. The move follows a similar ban around Russian state media by Instagram and Facebook owner Meta for foreign interference activity. Next, new research suggests more young people in England are being admitted into hospitals due to reaching a crisis point with their mental health. The study comes from the Education Policy Institute, a think tank funded by charity the Prudence Trust.
So what we've seen in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic is a huge surge in mental health issues among young people. And the causes for this are complex. You have simultaneously a kind of mental health system that has been eroded by lack of investment, and also the huge mental health impact of the pandemic and the successive lockdowns. So what these two things have collided together to create is a crisis. So I think what this report is trying to do is trying to summarise some of the problems facing the NHS and the new Labour government and set out some solutions.
Daniel Keane, the Standard's health reporter there. He's been looking into the figures for Tech and Science Daily.
Some NHS data shows that the number of young people aged between 11 and 25 admitted to hospital for mental health reasons rose by a fifth to around 150,000 between 2017 and 2023. So a really huge and significant change. Firstly, it's evidence that the public incidence of these mental health conditions is rising among young people. And as I mentioned, the reasons for that are quite complex. And secondly, that we're failing on prevention.
The researchers found there was a significant geographical variation in the services that are available to young people, including drop-in services, well-being cafes, peer support and youth groups.
It mentioned areas around London like Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire have a good range of non-specialist services. And there's also better coverage of targeted services for LGBTQ plus young people in London and the South. But what the report then goes on to say is that there's a real lack of provision of these services in poorer areas of the northeast, in the West Midlands, and it identifies cold spots.
The EPI is calling for the rollout of Young Futures Hubs, a key pillar of the government's programme to support young people's mental health.
What it's also calling for is for the government to commission research exploring the availability of services for mental health, including early intervention, and the extent to which these are meeting needs. The challenge will be making sure we have the right funding to build up these services, particularly in those areas where they're most needed.
Next, British Airways has agreed a landmark deal which means it is now the largest airline purchaser of carbon removal credits in the UK. A carbon removal credit represents 1 tonne of CO2 removed from the atmosphere, which is physically stored for hundreds to thousands of years.
The announcement involves 34,000 tonnes of carbon removals credits, and while that's a small proportion of our total emissions at British Airways, it's really important in signalling to the market that there is demand for carbon removals.
That's Director of Sustainability at British Airways, Carrie Harris, speaking to Tech and Science Daily from New York's Climate Week NYC on Monday. The airline has signed the $11 million deal with Curate, a UK-based company specialising in sourcing the highest quality durable carbon removal from across the world.
Multiple different types of carbon removals credits, ranging from nature-based solutions, including supporting rare species of trees, as well as anything up to technology-focused, such as direct air capture, and many different types in between. It's also innovative because we've tried to showcase as much as possible UK solutions, and some of this even includes capturing carbon from whisky distilling processes in Scotland.
Now, good news for all you Stardew Valley fans out there. The developer has finally announced a release date for the much-awaited update 1.6 on console and mobile. The game has sold more than 30 million copies since its release in 2016, making it one of the most successful indie games of all time. Eric Barone, aka Concerned Ape, is the developer behind the farm life simulation game, and said in a post on social media that the update hits consoles and mobiles on the 4th of November. And yep, that also includes the Nintendo Switch version. Let's go to the ads. Coming up in part 2, our social media editor Sophie Butcher on the continued resurrection of the 90s gadget Tamagotchi. See you back here in just a minute. Welcome back. Despite octopuses coming across as relatively solitary creatures, when it comes to hunting, they have an extra hand from fish. In the past, they have been seen hunting together for shared prey such as mollusks and crustaceans, but a new study sheds light on their remarkable teamwork, saying that when hunting prey together, some appear to share leadership. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior in Germany tracked octopus fish hunting packs during scuba diving expeditions in the Red Sea. However, it's not all happy days for the hunting teams. The scientists observed anger among some of them, such as spotting octopuses punching some fish to the outer areas of the group. And finally, time for a bit of 90s nostalgia. If you were a fan of the egg-shaped keyring, which was home to a little round blob, aka Tamagotchis, well, a store has come to the UK. According to the BBC, when global sales of the toy rocketed in 2022 and 2023, it prompted curator Bandai Namco to open its first shop here.
It's clearly part of this wider sort of trend of specifically Y2K throwback. You know, a lot of people remember them from the 90s, but they're also incredibly, like Y2K coded. And yeah, I definitely think you can see that they're trying to play into this like 90s, noughties nostalgia.
That's the Standard social media editor Sophie Butcher. The new shop is in London's Camden Market, and they're fully stocked with variations of the much-loved digital pet. But will the craze hold up?
Yeah, I think definitely you see TikToks of, people rediscovering Tamagotchi. I also think there's a bit of a pushback against, I don't know, like it feels so like retro and kind of wholesome and like a complete antidote to social media and like high-tech online gaming. It's just very offline, very unplugged.
Now, I remember sometime during the 90s, I dropped mine down a drain at London's Serpentine Gallery. I wonder if it's still there. You're up to date. Come back at 4 p.m. for the Standard podcast. For all the latest news, head to standard.co.uk. Tech and Science Daily will be back on Thursday at 1 this week. See you then.